Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right to podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. I am so excited for this week's episode of Aspire Real Men, Real Conversations, because in my mind, we're trying something new this week. We have two fellow student guests on our podcast, David and Nick, and we're going to live up to the title of our podcast this week. We're trying to have real conversations amongst, in my mind, just four outstanding real men in every of the best definitions of that. Nick and David are high school juniors in Northern Virginia at Flint Hill School, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hey, my name is David. I go to Flint Hill School. I play football, and I'm really excited to be on this episode and speak my mind and speak some truth about young men my age. And yeah, I'll pass over to Nick.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Briochet. I am a student at Flint Hill School, good friends with David, and just want to give a big shout out to Alex for having me and David to have this opportunity to, like similar to what David said, speak our truth and hopefully inspire others to do so.
So, it's just exciting to me to have you guys on the show. So first of all, thank you very much. And Hugh and Gabriel, my co-hosts on this show, we were able to have a little bit of get to know each other session earlier this week. And I was amazed at the level of content of our sort of get to know each other and prep discussion. Actually, I wish I had taped that for our episode. But we've all come together here to talk about, and as I was listening to the conversation amongst these four high school juniors, I heard lingo and terminology that I really wanted to title this episode. And the words that stuck out to me were check yourself, be honest with yourself, and friendship as a safe haven. And I want to dive right into the conversation, but I'd like to turn it over to my co-hosts, Gabriel and Hugh, for their thoughts and comments around this term, check yourself, be honest with yourself. Please give me some reflections.
Well, I think for me, first, one of the most important things is making sure that who you are and your true inner soul is reflected through all of your actions, and what you say and the things you do is representative of what is inside your soul. So everything you do, everything you say is who you are as a person, and you don't have to put on this fake persona. And making sure that you don't say these impulsive things or make these impulsive decisions, but instead you consistently check yourself and make sure that what you say and what you do reflects who you really are as a person, and that kind and empathetic person, that inner persona, rather than that outside kind of armor that people tend to put on, especially as young men.
So I also think, going off of Gabriel, when we talk about the term aspirational masculinity, I think it's all about really being who you are. It's not putting a limit on yourself or telling you to not act in a certain way. It's just kind of expressing to people that they are allowed to do whatever they want or express whatever emotion need be as a man. And I think a lot of times that is limited by societal perceptions of what people think a quote-unquote man is. And so through this episode, we encourage young men, as well as older men, to really check themselves and do a deep reflection on themselves, to find out who they truly are and make sure that that true person is reflected throughout your day-to-day life.
I think the whole idea of checking yourself and also being yourself is more of grounding yourself before you go into a situation, before react impulsively. And it's more of just going back to your morals. People can change, emotions change. And because of that, I feel like morals is what keeps us grounded so we don't act out of character. So I just feel like if people have a simple concept of that people are allowed to change, but also just having certain principles that you just never lose sight of. I think that's really important into improving oneself and particularly men.
So, interesting here that I think what I'm hearing so far is sort of connecting with your soul, grounding yourself, connecting with your morals. So, and this has been a big theme of our previous discussions, right? Just understanding who you are within your core, right? Whether that be values or some inherent, part of your nature. And yet there's so many things every day that disconnect us from that, right? Because we also talked about, Nick, you put it, grounding yourself versus being impulsive. And um, Hugh, I think it was you who said it was connection with your soul, and not your fake, not a fake persona. So, I'd love for you guys to talk about, before we dive into the beauty of that connection and identifying who you are. Um, can we talk a little bit about this fake persona or that impulsivity?
I think that whole idea of acting impulsive in that fake persona really starts with the overconsumption of social media. I think as men, um, we should be able to disconnect, not even for the sake of others, but mainly for our own well being. Being a man comes with a lot of struggles and expectations that we don't always quote unquote live up to. But personally, I feel like what are those standards that really makes a man a man? I don't feel like there's one definition, but I think it's through self reflection that we can find this is the type of man I want to be. I recently talked about reading Meditations and by Marcus Aurelius, and that book doesn't tell you how to be a man, but it tells you the simple steps of what it takes to find what kind of man that you want to be. And it talked about your biggest fear of not advocating your moral responsibility. And to me, that really stuck with me because to me, that represents what are the do's and don'ts that you strongly believe in. And it talks about not judging, the next man for his imperfections, because at the end of the day, no one is perfect. So it just takes, I feel like the simple steps are really just self reflecting.
And I think everyone really wants to improve themselves and find ways on how they can better themselves. But I think what holds people back is really accountability, because they have things that they feel and they want to improve themselves, but you're not able to do that if you keep on repressing these feelings and you have shame about something, or you're repressing how you truly feel. And to truly improve yourself and to have this self improvement, you need to really develop yourself and grow as a person by expressing all of your true feelings and not being afraid of expressing your feelings and doing different actions that truly represent who you really are inside yourself, and breaking down these barriers that you've experienced and that you've kind of built yourself because you want to maintain this persona. But by maintaining this persona, you keep yourself trapped in this box, this kind of man box, where you're very limited from getting deeper and really developing yourself as a whole person, rather than this narrow kind of perception of socially constructed masculinity.
So I want to sort of ask all of you a question, and maybe I'll turn to you first, David. Nick, you had mentioned you'd put out this question: what kind of man do you want to be? Is what you need to ask yourself. So now, I love that question. I'm going to turn it to each one of you now and put you on the spot, and just see what naturally comes into you. So, David, what kind of man do you want to be?
Honestly, just like in the positions I am at school, like as like a almost being a senior and being a leader of my football team, and then like being like a leader in like my BSU, and also like other like activities I'd be doing in school. The man I'm trying to be is a leader. I want to lead others, and I want others to kind of just like look up to me and see that like anything that is possible and that you're strong, like to just like stay with your morals and be strong with your morals. You don't have to be anyone that you don't want to be, and to just like be your true self, like how like what this podcast is named, like you want to be your true self, who you really are, your true values, and just stick with that as much as you can, and don't let anyone try to change that and take that away from you.
Wow. Fantastic. And for the sake of our listening audience, I met this fine young man, David, at Flint Hill after an all school presentation. And he came walking up to me with this beaming smile, and he was on crutches. So David just identified as a football player, and you could see, or I could anticipate this young man's coming to me with this beaming smile, yet he's on crutches, and it's obvious that he's an athlete. And I just loved what you said, because I could connect it to your hardships or trials that you faced with your various injuries in your sports career. Yet this is the way that you want to be a leader, not someone who is known as the alpha who other people have to listen to. That wasn't the lingo that you used, right? The lingo you used was really setting yourself as an example, and being true to yourself. And I do think that's a theme that is going to continue sort of coming up today. So now I'm going to switch it over to Gabriel and just ask the same question. What kind of man do you want to be, Gabriel?
Well, I think similar to David, I think being a leader is one that's very similar for everyone, and I agree with that. But I think also being someone who's very empathetic and caring and always kind of always wanting to hold that helping hand for others and being there for others, being in support of others, but also being very determined to achieve goals, but not achieving goals by putting others down, but instead bringing others up with you. And I think many of us people, they struggle with change because they change for others because others want them to change. So then they change. But when others want you to change and you change for other people, you never are really confident and like affirmative in your want for change because you don't have that want for change for yourself. But you can really change when you have that desire to change within yourself and you realize that you need to change. And that can really power that change to just be a better person and really understand how you can grow and how you have that bravery to really be a better man and be a better person, because we all strive to be that better person.
I think, at least for me, I think David's part or response to that resonated with me as well. And I think that as a man, in the form of a man that I want to be, I think that I just don't want to have limits. I think that I want to be a leader like David in this journey in promoting aspirational masculinity, but also not having a limit on myself or anything that I do throughout my life. Because even working with Alex, and I have the right to in this podcast, I think obviously I've improved in how I display myself as a true person, yet I think there are still certain limits. And that's something honest and I think true for every man and every boy. And I think it would be a lie to say that you're not limited in any aspect of your life. So I don't know, hopefully this will happen and this is a goal that I will achieve, but I just want to be who I really want to be as a man, and I don't want anything to hold me back.
Again, fantastic answer. Thank you, Hugh. And I'll turn it over to Nick now. What kind of man do you want to be, Nick?
I want to be a man that's perfectly okay with not being okay. And what I mean by that is that as a human, I'm going to go through various emotions, and I should be completely comfortable and allowed to go through those emotions because I am human. And also, I just want to be known as a man that creates a safe environment for other men to feel vulnerable. It's not always about, being tough, things like that. You should be allowed to feel sadness, feel happiness, various emotions. But for me, it's more about what are ways that we can express those different emotions. For me, I choose different mediums of art. And I want other boys and, young men and grown men to just find that something that brings either all the emotions out of them, or it's a way to channel anger, things like that, but through positive ways. I feel like nowadays it's really easy to lose yourself and engage in, not the best activities, but, being a positive role model and, telling people that there's different ways to express yourself. I feel like it's very important. And there's not enough of that, positive men role models nowadays.
Again, I'm sort of blown away from all of your responses, guys, and honestly, I don't think at 17 years old I would have been capable of being so connected and self-aware to be able to sort of speak to this. Gabriel, you have something to add?
Yes, and I would just say I know a lot of our listeners today will kind of take away from this discussion that they really want to improve themselves and they hear how they want to, but they often don't know how to. So I have a question I'll pose to everyone. And how do you think you can really use this self-awareness, and what does self-awareness look like in everyday life for all of you? Is this some small acts, or would it be a big act? Because I know some people, they would have trouble kind of taking it in a big step. So I think it's important to help our listeners kind of take it one step at a time so we can really help them with implement changes in their life and help them become a better person.
So in this day and age where we have a lot of technological advancements, I would assume everyone might have a phone, a laptop, even if not as simple as pen and paper. I feel like everything starts with writing down ideas and talking to yourself. I feel like that's the best form of therapy. You can lie to your parents, a therapist, but you truly cannot lie to yourself. And you, instead of trying to kind of judge yourself, you should take that pen and paper and just throw everything on the paper. Just explain how you feel and be honest about it, because there's definitely someone out there who's felt the same emotions. So no one can really help you as much as yourself. There's only so much someone else can do for you. So it's more of, when are you going to take the time to help yourself? So I'm really big on self-care. If taking a walk helps you clear your mind, if writing things down, if doing nothing, looking at this, whatever it is, just find that one thing that grounds you with the universe, and just, work from there.
I think adding on to Nick as well, I completely agree with whatever you find as like cathartic for your own self, and something that you believe can help you express your true self. But I also find a lot of comfort in talking to a person that you trust about anything you're feeling. And I think that's a big step, at least in how society holds men back from doing that. But I think if you can identify, a couple people in your life where you can express your problems and tell them what's wrong, that goes a long way. And I'd actually like to, as I'm saying this, I kind of think about a video that we watched in our Boys Leading Boys group at school. It was from the Kevin Love Foundation, and Kevin Love has been a strong proponent of mental health and masculinity and promoting healthy aspirational masculinity. And we see in this video, it's kind of like a spin-off of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and it's a short film of main character Spider-Man in the movie kind of having all these problems yet shutting them down, and goes through a panic attack throughout that. And it ends with him just telling his dad about his problems, and you feel this sense of relief through the screen as you're watching. And I think that's a lesson that I think everybody should take with them. that, you aren't supposed to shut down problems or emotions. Find that one person to talk to and tell them about it, because I promise you it'll be so much better if you do.
And I think also all of these things that you are holding inside, they will continue to kind of hurt you, like bring you down and put an additional weight on you, because I think one thing that I always like to think about is you have to own something to disown it. And you'll never really be able to lose something if you don't own it yourself. And going back to what Nick said, you can't lie to yourself. You have to be truthful with yourself. And you can only do that by owning what you do for yourself to be able to let it go. You can't really just have it go away without owning it yourself.
Yeah, and on that note, all the times that you kind of push away your emotions, that all that buildup leads to episodes of self-destruction. And that even, not only does it take up, mental capacity, but it also affects how you talk and treat other people. But getting back to what I think Gabriel said in terms of building connections and stuff, I felt like a lot of that we can find through friendship. That's where I found mine. I met David in 8th grade, and very easily we just clicked. We were just talking about YouTubers, and then from then we just started hanging out. We started talking to each other. Most of the times when we are together, we're just at his house, just talking about how we're doing, because those simple check-ins, at least to me, mean a lot. And knowing that there's someone else that wants to make sure that you're okay also kind of helps you feel like, I want to make sure I'm okay, just personally, from yourself to yourself. On that note, David's got something to add.
I was just going back on like coping mechanisms that you could use to like help you out. Like Nick's talked about like writing things down, and then I heard talking about like finding that person. I'd say in like my own experience that I found like the gym as like my coping mechanism, because like when I was like little, I was a little chubby kid, and I got picked on because of that. And girls would make fun of me, and then I'll just see like my friends like get girls, and then I wouldn't. And then I kind of like use that as kind of like fuel, and kind of like use that as like my anger. And instead of like doing something more destructive, as in like fighting people and getting in arguments and like fighting with my parents and stuff like that, I use that like in the gym. And I just find like talking more about the gym as like a therapeutic space where like I could I have like my future in my hands. I could control like how healthy I could be and where my like fitness goals can be, and I could control that in the gym. And like what Nick said, I can't lie to myself. So like if I don't go to the gym for like a like few weeks, then like I'm lying to myself. Like I'm not going to get better. But if I go consistently and I do the things I could do, then I know I'm not lying to myself. I know I'm going to the right direction. And I use that the gym also in like real life, that like I can't lie to myself, and I have to be truthful to myself in all situations. And yeah, that just helps me a lot. I just want to put that out there.
And I think the gym can also be used as a sort of metaphor with this idea of consistency, because for real improvement, it can't just be some one time off thing. Oh, I checked myself there. Okay, now I'm a better person. But now I can just not check myself in all these other situations. I think that's a way that many people think about it, but I think that is a very negative way to think about it, because instead, I think people should think of it as you have to really check yourself consistently, even if it's the smallest things. If you're checking yourself consistently over the smallest things, you'll be able to check yourself over a big thing. But instead, if you never practice really, and you never practice checking yourself with these small events, you will never have the courage and the capacity to check yourself when a big event comes on. But instead, if you build up that consistency and that practice with all these small events, you will have that courage and you'll have that capacity and ability to check yourself when a big thing comes on. And I think that's why people can think of this gym, like at the gym, as obviously a literal thing that you can go to and help better yourself, but also as a metaphor for kind of the idea of consistency to better yourself, rather than just some one-time thing where it's one time and then done. it's kind of consistency.
I love the term you used, practice. I feel like another part of quote unquote being a man, at least for myself, is practicing good habits. You don't just wake up and just naturally, have the type of muscles that you have, or necessarily good steady habits or whatever it might be. It varies from person to person. But I feel like one thing I definitely learned was to wake up in the morning and to kind of practice to be the person that you want to be. It's okay to think that you're a certain person, but if you're not displaying that, that's just delusion and that's not helping anybody. So whatever it is that you want to improve on, practice being that person. So you naturally, I'm really big on the conditioning, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental and emotional. The environment you put yourself in, that's part of how you condition yourself. And if you're around people who want to change for the better and are practicing to be a better person, naturally you're just going to fall into that. So it's also about the environment that you allow yourself to be in.
And like adding on to what Nick said, like practicing, like I try to practice to put myself in difficult situations, not situations where I can't get out of like something crazy, but like uncomfortable situations. Like I would even say this podcast, like I was very nervous of like coming up here and speaking my voice and doing like just speaking my mind. But I had to think when I was like sleeping last night. I was like, I have to put myself in these difficult situations because not everything I'm gonna do in the future is gonna be like, oh, I really don't have to like, I don't have to do this. I could just stay at home. Like some things I'll have to do. It's gonna come up. So like putting yourself in like difficult situations, but that are like manageable that you could control is also like really good to like moving forward and becoming a productive human being in society and also being a better version of yourself and also being a better man and being better for just everyone that you come in contact with.
I like what David said about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, and I appreciate your honesty about coming onto the podcast, because I think that that's something I'll admit I initially felt as well, and I think Gabriel and I talked about this a bit too. I think initially it was hard, but it's really just getting past that first step. You're not going to improve, you're not going to change unless you challenge yourself to face these uncomfortable situations. So I think that that really resonated with me, and I think that that honesty is important, and I think staying true to yourself as you approach these uncomfortable situations is also important, rather than just going at them saying, "Oh yeah, I can do anything." I think it's important as well to check yourself throughout and make note of what you can improve on as you approach these situations as well.
Yeah, I think that was well said. And to tell off of what David said, look at what we can accomplish at 17 by just taking that leap of faith. I like to think of life as kind of like a pool. You can see the bottom of it. And, sometimes, on a diving board, it might get kind of scary, but once you jump, you know exactly where you're going. You don't know how though, but that's just the unknown of life. And honestly, that's the beauty of it, because you don't know the great people you meet. Like I've met you guys, got connected with Alex, even David. David's part of this why I'm here, because initially I was very nervous to talk to Alex after. But then, having, a great friend like David, David kind of put me on the scene. And now I'm starting to think about, look at the change that we can do by just taking a leap of faith. And if we can get other men to do the same thing, then I think that's like a pivotal moment, making the world a better place, not just for men, but for the people in our surroundings.
I wish I had a freaking mic here right now, because I would just drop it and say, let's walk away. I have goosebumps, gentlemen, from listening to you guys, every single one of you. And I am just so blown away, encouraged about the power of each one of your voices. And I'm so grateful for the courage and bravery you guys utilize through just hearing how you vocalize that. It's not something that I normally would think about, because you guys are so thoughtful and well spoken. But of course, this is a huge leap of faith. It's a huge, difficult step to put your voices and your names out there. So I am just so filled with gratitude and amazement right now. And you guys have teed things up perfectly for a pivot to the power of friendship, right? We've covered what we wanted to talk about in terms of checking yourself and being honest with yourself. And, we talked about, the risks of the fake persona, but being who you are. But we've also talked a little bit about the safe haven that friendship, provides. So, I want to, because we have the four young men on this podcast today, and I see two sets of friends, and I have a feeling that this is going to be, a larger friend group, going forward, because I've absolutely become great friends with Gabriel and Hugh, and I somehow feel we're going to be lifelong friends, and I sort of have the same instinctive feeling with you guys. But tell me, you can use your guys' friendships as an example, or others, but tell me about the importance of friendship.
So I feel like friendship can come in different forms. With me, most of my friends happen to be guys, and I feel like friendship are built off of different things. I feel like the foundation of me of David's friendship is built on being scared in a way, because we are very close to our mothers. We always feel like we have to be on go. And what I mean by that is, we're very protective over our mothers. We talk about that, but because sometimes that can be mentally not draining in a way, but we feel like sometimes we need a space where me and him can talk about our problems. But I've also recently figured out that relationships can also come in, with the opposite sex. Like even with females, there's very good things you can gain from a friendship or a healthy relationship with a female. It gives you a different perspective of how a man might react to a female. But over time, I realized that friendships can develop into family in a way. I haven't known David for the longest, but just hanging out with him, talking to him, just certain experiences has kind of shifted our friendship to family in a way. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, and like adding on to it, just I feel like also like conditioning. Friendship is all about conditioning and going through like rough patches, because you're not gonna agree with like everything all the time. You're not gonna be agreeing with everything, doing the same thing all the time, and sometimes you're gonna like go and you're gonna find that hump in the road, and you're gonna have to go over it. And I feel like friendship has to do a lot about conditioning and like being able to go through the hard times and go through the tough conversations. Like I would say like even my other friends, like trying to like talk to them and tell them the like right things to say, and like like you shouldn't use those words, like probably use this, but like you can't like say that. Like trying to check, you have to check your friends sometimes, and sometimes that's really uncomfortable, but that's something you have to do. And your friend's ability to take that and receive it, and also just like use that in real life, that really shows you if that's a true friend. And if your friends aren't able to process that and be able to like understand criticism and also take criticism and actually just like be better from it, then you have to really check that friend. And yeah, I feel like friendships has to like do with conditioning, like we talked about earlier. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
I think I'd also like to emphasize my friendship with Gabriel, and why I think we became such good friends. I think initially we met in ninth grade, and I think we became friends pretty quickly. But one thing I've noticed about our friendship is that we're very able to be true to each other. I think again that's something that developed over time, and I think I have a lot of friends, but Gabriel is someone, I can always say what's on my mind and like express myself. And we joke sometimes, but I think that a lot of what comes out of it is deep, true conversations. And that's something I really appreciate because I don't think, it's something rare. But, it's important to find that kind of friendship. And like I think David was saying, conditioning as well in friendships, developing your own friendship to get to that level of truth is also important. So I think that's, what I have to say. I think that the ability to be truthful and check each other in friendships is very important as well.
And I think having that truth with each other is very important. And I think adding on to Hugh, like I think our friendship, we also have this level of trust between each other and knowing that we are able to kind of freely express our emotions and express how we are feeling in a comfortable way without being afraid that someone else, like that what we say is going outside of this conversation, and knowing that we are comfortable with each other and knowing that we can express our feelings without fear of judgment or something bad happening, but we can still not have judgment, but still be able to check ourselves and our peers. And let's say I can still check Hugh and he can still check me, because there's a difference, I think, between judging someone and knowing how to better your friend. I think for me, judging someone is kind of judging someone's actions and just putting it down, making it something negative. But instead, if one of your peers does something negative, you can maybe talk to them and have a conversation on why this happened and to better themselves and your friendship. And like what David said, that is what true friendship is holding each other accountable and making each other better. And having that friendship just elevates both of you into becoming better people instead of kind of bringing both of you down. And I think that's the power of friendship, is becoming better people and surround yourself with people who you want to become and who you aspire to.
And one thing that I can add here is, as someone who's a little bit older, please do not take friendships for granted. Because the older you get, the more transitions you make going from one environment to another. When I think about it from this perspective, it's actually quite challenging, right? Because you go from, high school. You guys have all made the transition from middle school to high school, and you might have lost, some connectivity with friends, during that transition. You're going to be going from high school to college, and then college to, working, and then possibly starting a family. There are all of these transitions that happen. And one thing and this is a topic my wife and I have been talking about recently. At 61 years old, I have not done a good job at staying connected to my close friends. And it is so easy to make all of these excuses about, and I think about a lot of the excuses, they're trap excuses of the mask that I want to put on as my persona as a man. Well, I'm the provider for the family, so I need to be focused at work. And, I don't have time for, that strong connection to friends. But then what happens is you lose that safe haven that you guys have been talking about, where you can be vulnerable, you can find that support. But I think most importantly about friendship is you have to be connected with yourself to be a good friend to others. And I think a lot of men, we get lost in that concept, Nick, that you talked about, of self-care, right? Because we just got to do. That's the comfort zone for men. We're the protectors, we're the providers. And I know that's what I got wrapped up in through my life. And I can see the ramifications of that. It possibly manifests itself in an overdependence on my wife for that emotional connection, and without thinking of what that overburdens, her with, right? So, I think these are things that, we all need to identify with. And I'm hearing wisdom from 17-year-olds that I'm saying almost a little bit shamefully, that I haven't applied to myself. So I really want to thank you for this level of honesty, because I think this is a podcast not only for boys and young men. This is a podcast for older men that I think is a wake-up call for us to reconnect with ourselves. And to me, I learned so much about bravery and courage from my 15-year-old daughter when she was assaulted. And I love the fact that I can take that template and apply it now here to you guys and learn from some awesome 17-year-old men about things that I need to do to check myself and be honest with myself, going forward. So again, I'm said this multiple times on this specific episode, but I'm sort of, grateful for this level of connection. And how do we avoid falling into, the traps, right? Because David, you said, you mentioned this theme of conditioning and going through the hard times and checking your friends. So many times I want to talk a little bit about the pressure that you guys are facing, because I think most of our listeners out there on a daily basis are facing choices that include, do I do the maybe harder work to connect with myself, or do I do the follow the easier path of following the group, dynamic and those fake personas that we all put on? So
I feel like eventually, if you put off those small moments of taking care of yourself, all that builds up. And not only does it build up, but it's going to further distance, I'd say, I'd say your soul from your mind, if that makes sense. Every day, we're very active in what we do, but I feel like your soul is what really connects your body to your mind. It allows you to feel certain emotions. And if you put off that hard work, it's kind of similar to homework. If you don't do those big assignments, that's going to catch up to you, and that can affect things such as GPA, and that affects later things down the road. So instead of waiting for all that to pile up, just do what you need to do now, because if you don't do it, it's just not going to get done, because no one's going to take care of you for you, at least from a emotional standpoint. So it's just all about personal accountability. So that's how I kind of think about it.
I agree as well. And I think that, this podcast came out pretty recently on March 1st. And I think leading up to it, I think that when telling my friends about it, other friends about this podcast, I think that the initial reaction was a bit of confusion, or like, what is it? Like, is this a seriously important topic? And I think there was a lot of uncertainty around it, and it came from people's lack of exposure to the topic. Yet I think when the podcast came out, the reaction changed, and I think that I only received support from my friends in the culmination of or the release of this podcast. And I think that that's an important lesson, because you have to stay true to yourself every step of the way. Don't let uncertainty or kind of doubting yourself prevent you from actually taking it every step of the way. And that applies to every aspect of life, I think. I think throughout each step, check yourself, say, is this true? Is this who I actually am? And if it is, keep following it, and you'll see what happens, because I'm personally very happy with this podcast. I'm happy how it's coming out, and that we're able to make a change in the world through it. And, it's just a reminder to say, check yourself and stay consistent throughout each step.
And I think also going back to what Alex was saying about pressures of who we are and who people expect us to be, I think this can also manifest in a way if you're that friend that people always turn to, and you're always there helping other people and kind of helping them express their feelings or being there and supporting people, which is great. But then I think sometimes that pressure can build up of always being there and supporting people and helping them express themselves so that you forget to help yourself. And it's very important to help others, but I think in that process, you always have to remember that you have to maintain your mental health and how you feel inside. And you can't forget, just because you're out there helping other people, and which is a good thing, and being there and talking to other people, you have to make sure that you don't forget about yourself, because to really be able to help others and to really put your full foot forward and help others effectively, you have to be able to feel good within yourself and have a good, stable kind of mental well-being to be able to put that foot forward instead. Because if you don't, you'll just kind of be there, but just glossy and not really be able to be as effective and as helpful if instead you were in a better sense of clarity and mental well-being.
Yeah, like I love what you said about like checking your own mental health, and going back to what we were talking about before about like being a leader and things of like that. Being a leader is like what incorporates that is also like checking yourself. And if you're not able to check yourself, then you can't be an effective leader. And like being a leader is also checking other people. So if you're not able to check yourself and go deep inside yourself and be like, hey, like, am I doing okay? Then you're not able to lead correctly and be the right person you want to be. And I think as a young man, like I try to like have those moments where I just talk to myself, and also just have like those weekends. Like I'm able to go out like any weekend that I want to, but then just like thinking to yourself, hey, let me just have this weekend to myself, like do some reading, watch a show by myself, just have dinner by myself. Um, those are really good things and things that you should incorporate to just like have better self mental health, because being like a leader and being like that man of your household, that's really hard to just check yourself sometimes. So like every other month, just like writing down, just be like, hey, let me just have this weekend to myself. That'll like help a lot and like help you to become a better person and help you become a better leader.
Completely agree with David, and I feel like in order for everything for David to be said to be effective, it really just stems from confidence, and not confidence in a way where you're putting down other people. It's just from natural. How can I put this? Just from natural, I guess, manifestation that I can be great in my own way, and I feel like through that kind of tunnel vision in a way, you feel a sense of confidence, and don't feel discouraged by others. And I feel like what I've done personally to help me stay grounded is I watch these self care vlogs on YouTube, these little cinematic vlogs. Me and David sometimes will watch them. They just talk about getting my mind right, and then it's very personal, and it helps distract the fact that you're not alone in this. And like I said, confidence is a big thing in terms of being an effective leader. Just one thing I would definitely say to everyone who is listening is whatever it is that's kind of holding you back, sometimes you just have to jump, because, being young, we have a lot of time to, walk away. But as we get progressively older, like me, for example, junior year, we have senior year next year, I don't really have, windows closed. So I don't really have that time to, you know, I don't have a safety net as much anymore. So there's going to be a certain point in time where you're just going to have to jump, and it's okay to fail. Through failure, you'll find your success. And I feel like you only truly fail once you give up. So if you keep trying, eventually something good is gonna happen from it. So just jump.
To add on to what Nick said, I loved everything that you said about like being able to jump and having that time. And I feel like being a young adult and like being a teenager at this time right now, like we have the most amount of time to make these mistakes without like having true consequences. So like taking the leap of faith that you talked about at this period of our life is going to be instrumental to what we're going to do when we're older, because when we're older you have like less, like the more mistakes that you have when you're older is going to be much more detrimental to how the rest of your life is going to go. But taking those like mistakes, those thought out mistakes, that like I feel like right now is the best time as like a young man to do it, because you have like the ability to make mistakes without having too many repercussions. But like when you're older, making mistakes is going to be more detrimental to how the rest of your life is going to go. But if you make these calculated mistakes and in these controlled settings where if you make this mistake, then nothing will like really go wrong. But like just knowing that like, oh, if I do this, then this will happen. Then this will carry on with you for like the rest of your life, and it will help you a lot in like different uncomfortable situations and going out there in life. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I think also with this idea of jumping and just taking a leap of faith, I think it's important for, even if you have to take, let's say, one or two, like one step back, but to take those 2 steps forward, I think that's the really important thing. And understanding that initially it might harm you, but that harm will do good for you in the future and it will benefit. Even if there's this one kind of little mistake or this one negative thing that you experience, it will result in a much bigger growth and much more positive outlook on life and much more positive benefits that come from taking that leap of faith and taking that risk that initially causes you some issues, but those issues instead kind of turn into this growth and make you a much better person and really have much more growth as a person and as a whole person.
So on that note, so many words of wisdom today. What I've heard today is, first is the importance of connecting with yourself and making sure that you're cared for and you have the mind space to be able to do that. And then you can check others and connect with others. And that's where beautiful friendships come from. And I'm witnessing some beautiful friendships here, on this podcast. And then if we can establish these friendships, just think about what is potential that we're identifying with the love and care and support that we know is inside of each one of us. And we're practicing taking care of ourselves and then manifesting in friendships, but then that can extend to our communities, right? Whatever communities we're involved in. And that's when we can get just such beautiful things going instead of these negative spirals that I think we're seeing all across our societies and frankly across the political landscape, right now. So again, just some wonderful conversations. I want to thank each one of you for jumping into the pool of this discussion and taking that leap of faith and taking that risk, because that, shows courage in having these discussions. And that goes to my co-hosts, Hugh and Gabriel, and then to our guests today, Nick and David, and then most of all to our listeners who are out there, who have found this podcast somehow through word of mouth or through searching for a topic and taking the time and the risk of jumping in and hearing some difficult conversations on what it means to be a man in today's world. So I hope we can continue to grow this podcast, grow in how we are as men, and grow our community of listeners and extend this out as far as we can get it. I already have an idea for a part 2 of this conversation. So I'm excited to continue this dialogue. And to our listeners, we launched our podcast at the beginning of March. Please subscribe. Please share it with friends. Please give us a 5-star rating and get it out there, because we want to bring more young men into this conversation. And I'm so grateful, Nick and David, for you guys joining us today, because you've helped us extend this. And we believe that we're all little pebbles that are going to be dropped into this pool and will make ripples that we won't know where and how far they will reach, but they will make an impact. So thank you very much. And we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about our student and executive programming at our website at ihavetherightto.org.